Toyota just did something the entire automotive industry quietly didn't want to happen. While every major automaker was busy announcing EV timelines, killing off sedans, and telling you that gasoline was basically over, Toyota went into a lab, came out with an engine, and essentially said, "Not so fast." And here's why that matters to you specifically. This isn't a concept car. This isn't a press release full of buzzwords. What Toyota has developed is a real, testable, production-bound internal combustion architecture with thermal efficiency numbers that, until very recently, people thought were physically impossible in a mass-market vehicle. We're talking about technology that doesn't just compete with electric powertrains. On certain metrics, it actually challenges the core assumptions the EV revolution is built on. So let's talk about what this actually is, what the engineering means in plain language, and honestly, what it means for what you buy next. For the past 4 or 5 years, the story everyone agreed on was simple. Internal combustion is dying. It's dirty, it's inefficient, it's the past. EVs are clean, they're the future. And if you're still driving a gas engine in 2030, you're basically driving a rotary phone. That narrative got so loud that Ford started restructuring entire divisions around it. GM announced they'd go all electric by 2035. Volkswagen bet the company on EV volume. And consumers started accepting it as just inevitable. But here's what was happening quietly on the other side of that conversation. Toyota, the company that sold more cars globally than anyone else last year, never bought in. Not fully. Their CEO, Akio Toyoda, stood up at an industry conference a few years back and said something that got him labeled a dinosaur by automotive press, that going 100% battery electric, as fast as the industry was pushing, would cause more environmental harm than good when you factored in mining, grid load, and energy source. People dismissed that, called it legacy thinking, called it protecting profits. Except Toyota kept engineering, and now we're seeing what they were working on. What Toyota unveiled, through their advanced powertrain division, in collaboration with their motorsport and hydrogen technology arms, is a multi-fuel capable engine architecture that achieves something close to 45% brake thermal efficiency in real-world conditions. Let me put a pin in that number, because we're coming back to it. The engine is designed from the ground up to run on 3 fuel types: conventional gasoline, synthetic e-fuels, and hydrogen combustion. Not hydrogen fuel cell, hydrogen that burns inside a traditional combustion chamber, like a normal engine, but without the carbon output. They've been testing a version of this in the Super Taikyu Endurance Racing Series in Japan, which is basically Toyota's real-world torture test. And the results have been compelling enough that they've signaled it's headed toward production vehicles. The platform is designed to be modular, meaning the same basic engine block architecture can be adapted across different vehicle classes, from compact cars up through trucks and commercial vehicles. That modularity is actually one of the most underreported parts of this story, because it means the manufacturing investment scales in a way that a dedicated EV platform doesn't. Now, Toyota hasn't called this a forever engine. That's a headline. But they have described the goal as creating a powertrain that remains viable and improvable across a longer life cycle than battery chemistry currently allows. And there's a meaningful difference between a marketing slogan and an engineering philosophy, even if the headlines blur them together. Let's actually talk about what 45% thermal efficiency means, because this is where the story gets genuinely interesting and where most coverage drops the ball. A traditional internal combustion engine from, say, a 2010 mid-size sedan, around 25 to 30% thermally efficient, meaning roughly 70% of the energy in the fuel gets lost, mostly as heat out the exhaust and through friction. It's genuinely wasteful, and that's a legitimate criticism. Modern engines have pushed that. A well-optimized engine today might hit 35 to 38% thermal efficiency. Toyota's Prius powertrain, probably the most efficiency-engineered gas engine in mass production, has been at around 40% in recent years. That was considered extraordinary. 45% is a wall people in thermodynamics kept bumping against. The theoretical maximum efficiency for a combustion cycle sits well above that, but in practice, real-world losses from pumping, friction, heat, soak, and combustion timing made 40% feel like a ceiling. What Toyota's engineers did is attack that ceiling from multiple angles simultaneously. They optimized combustion chamber geometry to reduce quench zones where the flame front dies. They implemented an extremely high compression ratio alongside a system that prevents knock, which is the destructive engine ping that normally limits how far you can push compression. They used a variable stroke mechanism that adjusts the engine's effective displacement under load. And they applied a waste heat recovery system that captures exhaust energy and feeds it back into the system. Each of those things individually isn't new. Toyota putting all of them together in a production intent package with the fuel flexibility to run on non-fossil sources, that's the development. Think about it this way. If you could take a gallon of gas and instead of getting 30 miles out of it, you got 45. You've changed the conversation about range anxiety, refueling time, and the energy cost per mile in a way that doesn't require building a new charging infrastructure from scratch. Now I want to be careful here, because this section could easily turn into an EV hit piece. And that's not what this is. Battery electric vehicles are genuinely excellent in specific use cases. If you drive primarily in a city, you have home charging, you're doing under 200 miles on most days, and you live somewhere with a relatively clean electrical grid. An EV makes real sense. The instant torque is real, the low maintenance cost is real, and the driving experience in something like a Model 3, long range or a Hyundai Ioniq 6 is legitimately impressive. I'm not pretending otherwise. But the comparison Toyota is forcing people to have is about system-level efficiency, not just tailpipe output. Here's what that actually means. An EV running in a region where the grid is coal-heavy is, on a wells-to-wheels basis, not dramatically cleaner than a 45% efficient ICE running on e-fuel. The electricity has to come from somewhere. The grid is not magic. Then you add the mining conversation. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, the supply chains. For these materials run through some of the most environmentally compromised extraction operations on the planet. Toyota has published life cycle assessments arguing that a hybrid or advanced ICE vehicle over a 10-year ownership period can match or beat the carbon footprint of certain EV configurations depending on where you live and how your grid is powered. Are those assessments perfectly neutral? No. Toyota has a financial interest in this argument. But the methodology is transparent enough that independent researchers have corroborated the general finding. EVs are not uniformly, definitively cleaner than the most advanced ICE technology when you look at the full life cycle. The conversation is more complicated, and Toyota is forcing that complication into the open. Let's talk about forever, because it's in every headline about this, and it deserves honest treatment. No engine runs forever. No technology lasts forever. Anyone telling you otherwise is selling something. What Toyota's engineers mean, when they use language about long-term viability, is something more specific and actually more interesting than the clickbait framing suggests. They're arguing that combustion engine architecture has continued improvement vectors that battery chemistry right now doesn't. Here's the thing, a lithium-ion battery is, at its core, a chemistry problem. And chemistry problems reach hard limits. Once you've optimized the cathode material, the electrolyte, and the cell geometry, you're in incremental territory. The step change improvements in battery energy density are slowing down compared to the promises made 5 years ago. Combustion engines, especially when you open up the fuel type variable, still have meaningful improvement pathways. Synthetic fuels made from renewable electricity can take a carbon-neutral liquid fuel and run it through an engine that keeps getting more efficient. Hydrogen combustion is still in early stages. The physical architecture, a spinning crankshaft, pistons, valves, is something we have 100 years of manufacturing infrastructure around. Toyota's point is that betting everything on one technology pathway, before that pathway has solved infrastructure, cost, and resource supply chain, is a risk. Keeping advanced combustion as a parallel path isn't regression. It might be the more pragmatic form of progress. So what does any of this mean if you're someone who just needs to figure out what to buy in the next year or two? If you're in a major metro, you have a garage or reliable charging access, and your drives are predictable, the EV math might still work for you. That's a real segment of the population. But if you're towing a trailer, running a small business that depends on a pickup or van, living rurally where the nearest fast charger is 40 minutes away, or in a climate where battery range drops 30 to 40% in January. Toyota's direction matters to you in a concrete way. The data on battery degradation over a 10-year ownership period is something more people should be looking at before they buy. A 2023 battery pack at 100% capacity is not a 2033 battery pack at 100% capacity. Degradation curves vary by chemistry and climate, but a 10-year-old EV in a hot climate might be at 75 to 80% of original range. Replacing that pack, depending on the vehicle, can run anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000. That cost rarely enters the EVs are cheaper to own calculation in the way it should. Toyota's advanced ICE path, if it reaches production as described, gives a realistic alternative for buyers who genuinely can't make the EV model work. Not because they're resistant to change, but because their actual lives don't fit the assumptions the EV market was designed around. Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about this announcement. Toyota is not anti-electric. They invented the mass-market hybrid. The Prius literally created a template that the entire industry copied. They have solid-state battery development underway. They're not a company clinging to carburetor nostalgia. When a company with that track record stands up and says, "Wait, let's not abandon combustion engineering yet," and then backs it up with measurable thermal efficiency gains and a production intent, fuel-flexible platform, that deserves serious attention. The automotive industry is not well served by a binary debate. EVs versus ICE as a moral and technological binary has made the conversation stupider than the engineering actually is. Toyota's announcement is a reminder that there are brilliant engineers working on multiple fronts, and the future of transportation is probably more diverse, more regionally adapted, and more technically complex than the clean storyline being sold by both sides. The best outcome for consumers is competition. Real technical competition, where battery engineers push to close the range and degradation gap, and ICE engineers push thermal efficiency and clean fuel compatibility higher. That competition produces better, cheaper, more reliable vehicles for everyone. And right now, Toyota just threw down a marker that says that competition isn't over. I'm going to keep tracking where this engine architecture lands in production. There's a 2026 platform rumored to carry a variant of this technology into a mainstream sedan and a light truck application. And if those numbers hold up under real-world testing, that's a story worth following closely. If that's the kind of thing you want to know before you walk into a dealership, hit subscribe. I don't cover every car. I focus on the technical stories that actually affect your ownership decisions and your wallet. Drop a comment below. Are you still in the ICE camp, moving toward hybrid, or committed to full electric? I'm genuinely curious where people land on this, because the comments on these videos always tell me something the data doesn't.